Thanks. I'll move on quickly to the controller issue, but I just want to correct the record. Mr. Babbitt, you can help with this. You served on the 93 Commission, that's correct? The 93 Commission, you served on it, looking at the changing the ATO governance?
I believe that was a 92 commission.
Yeah, you
Yes.
did. Okay. Was the conclusion to go to a private corporation, or was the conclusion to establish an independent government corporation?
I will plead a fair amount of distance between 1992
Okay.
and
Well, I
today.
have it here, and it actually, and although Ms. Robine and others keep saying we were there, this is what they wanted to do, it actually came to the conclusion it should be an independent government corporation removed from the federal budget process, not a private, not-for-profit corporation. Just wanted to correct the record on that. Let's move on to air traffic controllers. Thank you. Ms. Bristol, why was this BA created? My understanding is the ATSAT had been compromised, and that was part of the rationale for the BA? Or Mr. Cannon?
Yes, Congressman DeFazio, I'll attempt to answer your question there. The biographical assessment was created to provide some initial screening as applicants matriculated through the process. When we decided to change the process.
It's not because the ATSAT had been compromised.
Well, we can talk about the ATSAT a little later, but let me try to answer your first
well,
question.
here, all right, let me just get to my point.
Okay.
I met a person at the last NATCA event here on the Hill who went through the CTI, is working as a military controller, but can't come aboard with the FAA because she can't pass the BA, and the BA seems to be designed to determine whether you have the temperament to be a controller or not. So if someone has gone to the school, successfully completed the school, and is working without reservation, without problems, as a military air traffic controller, is that test valid?
Yes, sir, the test is valid. Both versions of the biographical assessment.
I thought that you had to
reviewed.
go out, I thought you had to go out, you hadn't validated the first one with the workforce, and then you redid the BA, and it has been somewhat validated, but there's still questions in my mind about that validation.
No, sir.
I mean, well, why would you then want to screen out a person who's fully qualified, working as an air traffic controller, trained? Why would we want to screen her out with a biographical assessment?
Well, I don't believe we want to screen
But I mean,
any particular
there seems to be a
individual.
problem. I mean, what's the goal? I mean, if the goal is to get people, you know, because it becomes more expensive as you go through the process, you have to apply the ATSAT. My understanding is it costs you $139 per ATSAT compared to $45 for the SAT. So I'm really, you know, kind of wondering about this whole process, the BA, the ATSAT, and whether we need two processes or whether we should have one simplified process, which is, do you have the skills necessary, yes or no? And we're going to give you an ATSAT. We're going to keep it secure so it doesn't get compromised in terms of answers. Maybe we can get Princeton to do it for us for $45 a person as opposed to $139. I mean, this whole process is aggravating. I mean, I think we're screening out potentially at least one, and I'm sure there's more than one, qualified people from becoming controllers. I mean, you're totally confident in this process is the best way to go. BA, then the ATSAT.
Yes, sir, I am, and I think it is producing results. As Ms. Bristol just said, we will exceed our hiring target this year.
Okay, well,
I'm confident of, and we'll have a good start into
Ms.
next
Bristol, why is the target less than 2,000? The Academy has the capability of processing 2,000. Why? And we have a severe shortage in many of our critical centers, and it's going to take people 3 years to get there. Why are we hiring less than 2,000?
So as we stepped from 15 to 16, we transitioned to a new controller training contract. We wanted to ensure that we didn't have more trainees in the field than that could go right into training. In other words, we track to the individual where they're at and how many training resources are available to move those people through the system.
So you're saying that you put through, your target is because of restrictions in terms of supervision of entry-level controllers?
It was one consideration. As we move into next year, we're looking to bump that and look to max out the academy as well, in addition to bringing on previous experienced controllers over and above that number.
Right. And the FAA has a target minimum head count, which is set by some sort of mathematical algorithm by the finance people. Doesn't sound ideal to me, because the green eye shades probably have something else in mind. And then we had the CRWG CPC working group, which came up with much more robust levels. So if we had a actually applied working group that drilled down into each center and came up with higher numbers, why do we even bother with the mathematical algorithm that popped out of the finance department with the target minimum headcount?
That would be the controller workforce plan. It's put out every year. It's a 10-year document. It's strategic. It's very high level. The ATO worked with NACA, and that CRWG, which is a controller resource working group, it was ATO and NACA.
Right, so it's actually practitioners working with the bureaucrats to come up with real numbers as opposed to numbers that were created by a mathematical algorithm.
It doesn't take into account everyone that's in a facility. What it does is average out the certified professional controllers, and we set targets on how we're going to staff to that level and move people through the system from our more healthy to less healthy facilities. But we have to account for the developmentals that are also in the building. So in working together, I'm very confident that is how we have laser approach on who we're putting into which facilities.
Okay. Mr. Rinaldi, can you comment on this BA process? I mean, when they did the control, do you know how many controllers took the test and what their pass and fail rate was with the BA, actual working controllers?
Sure. Thank you, sir. When they did the first one in 2014, 28,511 applicants took the BQ. 2,407 passed. So, roughly 10% passed. Then we found out later on that, and I'm not a scientist, but all you have to do is read the first page about a biographical assessment. It says that the test must be validated with a large group of incumbents. And being the only person who represents a large group of air traffic controllers, it was never validated with us. So we asked the FAA, if you're going to do this again, you probably need to validate this test. And they did. We did it together and validated, and roughly 18,000 took it, and roughly 5,000 passed the BQ, about 28%. Again, I don't know much about the science, but I do know there are a lot of qualified people out there that are actually doing the job today that have not passed it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm over my time.
Just